So far, we have established that life has limited resources, limited time, limited energy, even limited intelligence. Hence, the need for leadership to prioritize factor endowment against constraints, minimize cost and waste, and maximize returns and benefits for all. We've said that before leaders act, we must at least diagnose or conduct situational analysis, research, understand what really is causing the problem. So trace the cause and effect, and then understand the kind of relationship between the cause and effect. Identify reinforcing loops and understand why single interventions often fail in complex systems. We also argued that even after diagnosis, the leader must understand the environment in which the situation is occurring and the game that is, again, being played, which is incentivizing the actions or the choices of the people, whether it's zero sum or negative sum or positive sum, because cooperation and oneness will multiply capacity and get greater results, but zero sum thinking will destroy it. Now, we know that we must execute, right? Because we understand the problem, we understand whatever the situation is, but execution means we've got to work with people. Proverbs chapter 14 verse number 4 says, where there are no oxen, the manger is clean, but much revenue comes by the strength of the ox. Meaning we need people and all the issues that come with people, else we can't achieve much. I mean, if you bring in the ox, the manger is no more going to be clean, but without the oxen, there's no way you're going to get much result. And I have to add that not every leader arrives at their destination the same way. Some follow this sequence: diagnose, strategize, and then act. Others just build. They start before they fully understand the problem. And often they don't even have the right people, or they don't even have a good strategy. They just figure things out as they go. And it can be costly sometimes. Wasted years, broken relationships and partnerships, or even resources being spent on the wrong things. But through persistence and agility, yes, you can get results if you continue to grow either way. But what separates those who grow from those who fall apart, I think, is that those who survive stop relying on instinct alone and they start building effective systems. The ones who never make that shift eventually hit a ceiling they cannot push through. The organization stalls, or the family fractures, or the initiative collapses under its own weight. Either way, the destination is the same. We must confront human nature as it actually is, not as we want it to be or we hope they will be, or excuse them to be, as they actually are. Last time, we explored the prisoner's dilemma. We talked about how we make selfish choices instead of working together. When working together, we eventually probably make us better off. But there is a deeper problem hidden inside of this dilemma, one that philosopher Derek Parfit actually spoke about in his book, Reasons and Persons. Parfit's argument is that the very principle of rational self-interest, always do what is best for yourself, is directly, collectively self-defeating. He talks about other things that are self-defeating too, but he mentions that when each person follows this particular rationality or logic, the result is worse for everyone, including the person who followed it. Each prisoner, for instance, in the prisoner's dilemma, reasons correctly from self-interest. Each makes the rational move for themselves to betray, and each ends up worse off than if they had both acted against the narrow self-interest. This is what we know, at least from this understanding about human nature. We are, by default, self-seeking creatures. Not because we are evil, but because self-interest is the most immediate, most instinctive driver of behavior. I think the Bible confirms this. We fuel our own hunger before we notice someone else's hunger. We calculate our own risk before we consider the groups. We protect our own position before we think about the team. And this shows up in our everyday life. We copy an assignment because, well, the deadline is probably tonight and we don't have time. We let a colleague swipe our attendance card even though we never stepped foot at work that day. We stay quiet when the trotter mate forgets to collect the fare because we want to use the money for something else. We take illegal route to get to work on time because everyone else is using it. I mean, if we stayed in our lane, then everyone who is cutting corner will probably come ahead of us, and so we will follow them. Most of us would describe ourselves as good people, rational people, and we would be right. Our actions are for good reasons, right? At least no one is a villain in their own story, but that is precisely the problem. We're doing what is reasonable for ourselves in the short term inside an environment or a system that makes self-interest easy, and doing what is right probably very costly. So we cut corners. We will do anything to save our face. We will seek our own glory. We will lie so that we are not perhaps perceived to be bad. Is that not what we do? That is not cynicism. That is what Prophet demonstrated with, I think, philosophical precision, and what every leader knows from practice. Self-interest, left unchecked, erodes the very outcomes everyone desires most for, let's say, the country or the community or the team. So the question is not, how do we find, people who will not be self-seeking, or people who will just do good for everyone? How do we inspire people to do better for everyone and not just for themselves? Well, those are fine aspirations, but they are not strategies. The real question is, how do we build environment or systems that produces good outcomes even when people behave exactly as we should expect them to behave? Imperfectly, self-interestedly, or inconsistently. This is one of the most important shifts a leader can make, from relying on just speaking and being angry and being mad and trying to get people to do the right things, to design an environment and systems. In the early days of ATMs, the machines dispensed cash first and returned the card after. The logic seemed reasonable. I mean, people came for cash, so give them the cash, right? No time wasted. But many people took the money and walked away, leaving their card in the machine. Banks lost cards and customers were frustrated. I don't know why they designed it that way. Perhaps they didn't factor into it human behavior. They didn't anticipate that's what people would do. But we all do know that's exactly what people would do. So how did the banks solve it? They did not launch a customer education campaign. They did not put up signs, probably, around the machine saying, please remember your card. No, they did not even appeal to people's sense of responsibility. They changed the order. Now the machine returns the card first. Only after the customer takes the card does the cash come out. The customer's own desire for cash ensures the card is retrieved. I mean, if you don't take your card, you don't get your money. So the behavior changed, not because people changed, but because the system changed. The system was improved. I mean, recently we saw the same thing with Grok on X, where people started using it to undress women. I mean, they should have thought about it, but they didn't factor into it human behavior. It would be convenient if people simply changed. If we could gather people into maybe one big classroom and educate everyone on what is right and what is good and what to do, what not to do, and which everybody just aligned, then we wouldn't even need the police. Wouldn't that be great? That sounds like a good idea, but a good idea is not necessarily the ideal solution. So what does this mean for us as leaders? It means we are to see all these things as systems instead of isolated parts. I mean, when we look at it as system, we don't just see people, but we see the people, we see the environment influencing the actions, and we see the incentives shaping their choices and all the other things that are working together to produce this result, and even how they all interact really for this outcome to become what we see and even complain about. Our job as leaders is simply not to tell people what to do. No, Our job, I think, is to create effective systems. I mean, of course, whilst teaching people what is right and what is wrong, but effective systems and environment that will make sure that doing what is right is easy and doing what is wrong is punished. So what I think we can do is to first understand predictable human weakness. We shouldn't design solutions for saints. We should design solutions for stressed out, distracted, self-interested human beings, because that is who we all are on our worst days. A system that only works when everyone is at their best is a system waiting to fail. Number two, let's remove friction from the right actions. If we want people to save money, for instance, we must automate the deductions before they see the paycheck. Number three, let's add friction to the wrong actions. That is to say, let's make it harder to do what is wrong. I mean, not impossible, because humans are humans, people are people, but inconvenient enough that the default shift. The ATM, for instance, works because the machine made it harder to forget the card, not because people became more responsible. Functional societies with low crime rates, for instance, are not that way because the people living in there are saint or have always been saint. They are that way because systems made it risky and difficult to be corrupt or break the law. Number four, we've got to close loopholes as they appear. No system is perfect on day one. People are very creative and smart. They always find gaps. The leader's job is not to design systems once and walk away, but to watch, to learn, and continuously improve. If we continue to improve the system, we will continue to incentivize the right habit and detect the wrong ones and fix it. So here is what many leaders miss. Effective systems do not just produce outcomes. Over time, they form character. When people live inside a system that consistently rewards honesty, punishes corruption, and makes the right path convenient, something shifts. What began as compliance becomes habit. What began as habit becomes conviction. The external structure slowly moves internal character. This is how culture is built. Until next week, lead today, lead yourself so you can lead others. We are TGLC.